I want to welcome everybody to IANDS, Arizona IANDS, and our guest speaker event today. First, a little bit about the disclaimer. IANDS is neutral and does not align itself with any particular social, religious, or political ideology. We promote respectful dialogue. Views expressed by our guest speakers during our program may not be the views of Arizona IANDS or IANDS International. We are an authorized group of the International Association for Near-Death Studies. We welcome donations and support help to continue to do our work. We are a 501c3 entity. We are a founding partner of IANDS Sharing Groups Online, ISGO. This presentation is made possible through our partnership with ISGO. The event is being recorded and will be available for viewing at isgo.ians.org. Give us 24 to 48 hours to get it edited and up. That would be really awesome. Thank you. Welcome to this event. Questions and answers will be handled through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We've disabled chat, and this is so that we can have more fluid exchange. Questions get lost in the chat section we found, and we don't get everybody's answers. So Q&A button, please. And typically we meet at 7 p.m. That is our goal if we have speakers. And so far, we've been very lucky lining up speakers. In July, brand new breaking news, we have Michelle Clare. Last night, she was on Coast to Coast AM, talked about her work with angels, and she will join us on July 9th. So far, we don't have an August speaker lined up, but in September, we have Jack Bybee. And now tonight, we have Jane DeForest, and let me talk a little bit about her. She's going to present Secrets of the Ferryman, what NDE ancient mystery schools and indigenous wisdom share. Do you love that heartfelt moment of a typical near-death experience story when the living soul separates from the dead body and raises to meet a luminous being of light who emanates unconditional love and acceptance? Does this give you the hope to know that we survive death and that our eternal home is a friendly place? Then you will enjoy this interesting and informative presentation. Without having to die, you will learn more about how our ancient ancestors made the classic journey to the other shore. The sacred passage through the circle of life, death, and rebirth to an external life is revealed through the fragments left to us from a dusty epoch. For thousands of years, our ancestors made religious pilgrimage, thank you, to the center of the mystery in order to experience NDE type journeys. The important message of life eternal is hidden in plain sight in the indigenous understanding of natural cycles, and deep within the bowels of antiquities mystery schools. Please join Jane for this fascinating presentation as she shares her personal slides of the epicenters of the ancient mysteries, Eleusis, Greece, Abydos, Egypt. She will share her own life-changing experience from the Great Pyramids, King's Chamber, Pompeii, and the Amazon jungle in Peru. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jane. Jane is known for the integrity, humor, and sensitivity that she brings to her sessions, leaving clients feeling inspired, supported, and seen. With her intuitive art technique, Jane often draws exact renderings and translates meaningful messages from people and animals who are in the afterlife. Jane has worked with personal animal and business clients for over 20 years. She studied at the Rhode Island School of Design with Buddhist teachers, Lakota, and plant medicine shamans and healers. Jane has researched and journeyed to sacred sites, including Peru, Bali, and Egypt. Her book, Love Never Dies, has won 3 awards and is translated into 3 languages. Her artwork is in collections all over the world, including Martin Sheen's collection and Jane Goodall's collections. Jane's pro bono and community volunteer work includes facilitating communication for children with special needs, her Save the Bees project in Ecuador, animal communication for the Big Cats Sanctuary, those are tigers and lions, really big cats, and she is past director of Portland IANDS. Jane has donated time teaching her children's art, creativity, and shamanic journey curriculum in schools for over a decade. It is my pleasure to now introduce Jane. Stop the screen sharing. There we go. And there's Jane, who's muted.
Oops, you can't hear me. Thank you, Howie.
You're welcome, Jane. Thank you for joining us, and let me know if you need something.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, it's such an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And it's so nice to be back. I love AZIANDS and I love being part of this community, and I really miss it a lot. I'm the past group leader of Portland, Oregon, and it was a beautiful experience back in the day when we could have physical meetings. And there was a bunch of people sitting around who'd all flatlined and sat around talking about their experience of traversing the dimensions and having encounters with light beings, having life reviews, and how that changed their life. Being in the presence of people who've had this experience is really powerful. So this evening, I'm very honored to be able to present my own insights into what I've learned, both from my own intuitive work as a professional intuitive, as well as my own research into near-death experience and indigenous cultures and how they traverse different dimensions, as well as how they work with near-death experience. And the ancient mystery schools and the systems that were used in our ancient paths that are our ancestors, both the ancient mystery schools and the indigenous people, whether we are actually Native American Indians or whether we are from the Siberian steppes, we all have within us, they say, 244 DNA of 244 ancestors. And the truth is, the shamanic tradition or the ancient religion, before we had an organized religion, these ancient ways date from 100 to 30,000 years, depending on what anthropologist you talk to. So these are ours, these are our own traditions, and our own indigenous ancestors had a way of dealing with how do we get from here to there? What happens when we die? What's important? And I just want to share what I've learned humbly, and be happy to answer any questions. This has been a bit of a preoccupation for me. And as I like to say, we don't get out of this life dead. From everything that I've learned and from my interaction with people who have flatlined or returned to tell the story, it's impossible to actually die. That we all have an eternal aspect to ourselves that leaves the physical dimension and returns to some place we could easily refer to as home, perhaps the place between lives, heaven, Valhalla, Nirvana, many names to describe a dimension that's real and we're often told is more real than this physical existence. I'm really passionate about this. I really feel that, in fact, if we had better understandings, as our ancient ancestors had, of this important journey, and it would reflect well on our life in this existence, and we could live a more valuable and important life if we had a better understanding, not only of death, but how we get from here to there. So that's how I wanted to emphasize the ferryman, which is an ancient term for the guide, the psychopomp that helps us move from this physical dimension to home. I have a lovely slide presentation to show you, but I want to talk a little bit about what it is before I show you the pictures. And then I'll be happy to share some personal stories because I think that's so important. This is my own personal testimony, and I'll be sharing with you how I have personally traversed the dimensions and met my maker, saw my life in review, did not have a near-death experience, but I was able to get there in a different way, and how I have learned through my own teachers, my own shamanic teachers, how to take people on journeys into this dimension and to visit it. And I think that's so vital and so important. So the psychopomp, the guide, is an ancient guide. Our ancients refer to this guide as a psychopomp. At least that's the Greek word. A shaman talked about spirit animals. And there's many different traditions that perhaps refer to them as angels. There's often ancestors that help us move from this dimension home. But we never seem to die alone. And I think that's so important to emphasize. There's a lot of fear about death, and I certainly sad about that. A lot of my clients, especially with bug 19 and the fear of being infected by a fatal illness, and all the fear going around, it's really up for people. And so I see a lot of people who, in essence, are afraid to live because they're so afraid to die. And so I want to emphasize and share what I've learned about this. It seems as if dying is very natural, and that the symbolism of the butterfly, as the butterfly emerges from the chrysalis, that we are the caterpillar in an earthbound existence, and that we are freed when we separate from our body to return to God or the higher place or higher dimension, and that it is important how we die and our consciousness to be pure and to be thinking of positive things. The Tibetan Book of the Dead and the Egyptian Book of Living and Dying talks about that. Although our culture is bereft of this knowledge, I hope that I in some way can talk about that. So I've also traveled to and been fascinated by the ancient mystery schools. My family took me when I was a teenager to Pompeii. That was back 100 years ago. And I remember there was a Villa of the Mysteries, and I was so compelled. I wanted to understand what these mysteries were about, but nobody could explain it because this was a mystery. But as I got older, I did more investigation and learned that these mystery schools were central to the religion of the ancient Greeks and Romans, and also the goddess cultures that predated these Western traditions in Crete and Knossos and so forth. But these mystery schools were an organized, state-run system where people were able to have a near-death type experience. And we know that from documentation of what accounts of experiences that people had during the mysteries, which were held at fall equinox. Those were the major mysteries, and the minor mysteries were held at spring equinox. And there's mythology about the goddess in two forms, the mother and the daughter, taken by Hades to the underworld and so forth. But these mysteries were more than just a representation of the vegetation goddess. They were, of course, talking about these mysteries would bring certain death. So not a lot of people talked about them, although there are accounts of what happened. We do know that the mysteries were served. And so it was a drink. Kykeon was a drink that we know was served, and there's been chemical analysis in some archaeological sites, so we have an idea of what was in the brew, and I can't wait to tell you what that is because it's very interesting. But what it did was induce a different state of consciousness where people were able to traverse the tunnel or cross the river Styx or cross the veil, as the ferryman would take the soul of the dead across the river to the other shore, which symbolized heaven, the guide. And this kaikian that people consumed was something that enabled them to have a life review, for them to be able to rub shoulders with the goddess and have an experience that was transformative, a spiritually transformative experience. Near-death experience is something, a word that we apply to this experience, but sometimes I think our names flatten things and make them, don't acknowledge the dimensional quality of what they are. So I'm going to go into a little detail about what we think Kaikian really was and what it did. In addition, with my shamanic training, I've come to understand that this is very natural in indigenous cultures for the shaman. The shaman is someone in a community that's basically has 3 different jobs. Since we don't really have a shaman in our culture, they represent the physician, they're the healer, the psychic or the psychopomp, so they're able to help souls traverse, be the ferryman and help them traverse this dimension and to go back home, or to be able to visit the realm of the dead and to do healing. And also they are the priest, the religious leader. So this is common in indigenous cultures to be able to talk to the dead, communicate with those ancestors on the other side. It's not taboo, it's nothing strange. And as I said, these shamanic traditions are natural, are our ancestors. It is within our own personal tradition, although we've had organized mostly monotheistic religions for the last couple thousand years. It's only been recently that we've understood the universe from that perspective. So I'll talk a little bit about that and share some information and share my slides. I took a trip last year. Well, actually, I think it was about 2 years ago now, back when we could travel, to Eleusis. And this was the epicenter of the mystery schools in the Western world. And it's fascinating. Every citizen was able to go once, and they would make a pilgrimage once in their life, starting at dawn in Athens, and walk, making offerings to the goddess on their way. And in this realm, once they reached Eleusis, and I went there, and I have pictures to show you, it's fascinating. I was like one of the only tourists there. These mystery schools have lost their power and intrigue in modern culture. But when I went there, I can tell you, I actually did some psychopomp work when I was there. It was a spirit. We stayed and meditated, and I was able to contact the energy from thousands of years ago. And there was a spirit that was trapped there. He died of some kind of poisoning. So I hope that I was able to help him to return to his home on the other side. I felt like I did. That's a lot of the work that I do with people. When I do intuitive work professionally, I'm reading them, I'm communicating with their ancestors, which is something that a shaman would do in indigenous culture. And I really, I think what I haven't seen before is all of these diverse traditions and information put together in a cohesive presentation, which is exactly what I've done, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you. So what I'm going to do now is share my slide presentation, and then I'll tell you some stories as I'm going along. And then at the end, I'll answer any questions that you have. And I really appreciate that you're here. This is unusual information, but to me, it's so fascinating and it's so important to share. So thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to do this. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides with you right now. And let's see, here we go. And I'm going to see. Is that, no, that's not what I want to do. I'm gonna go. No. Wait a second. Move that there. And I'm gonna do this. And I'm gonna do that. Sorry, bear with me. So am I sharing? Hold on.
You are sharing, but you haven't started there. There you go.
Okay, so bear with me. I'm going to share and I'm going to share there. Now, do you see my slide presentation?
I do, but it's not running. It's just a draft mode with your slides on the side. There you go.
And we're good to go?
Good to
Okay.
go.
Okay, so this is my book, Love Never Dies, and it's a collection of stories of my encounters, my clients and encounters with spirits on the other side and ancestors. You might enjoy it. It's well illustrated. And here's our presentation today. Secrets of the Ferryman. And I love this illustration. It's a Victorian illustration. And you can see the ferryman in the water there. But if you squint your eyes, you can see it's a skull. And that's such a beautiful representation of how our ancients pictured the guides that would take us from this realm to the other. Here we have some lovely images of how the soul leaves the body. And many people talk about when they have left the body, those people who've had near-death experiences, how it's as if they are still themselves in the shape of their body, but they step outside their body, often standing next to, say, doctors who are trying to revive them, or at the scene of an accident where they're looking at their crumpled body, perhaps in a car accident. And they move towards the light. And the bottom right, you can see a tunnel. This is an old painting, I think 1600s, where you can see the tunnel of light with angels floating along. And oftentimes people, when they die, souls, when they die, meet a being of light traversing down the tunnel. This is an Aboriginal picture on the upper left. They've got spirits all floating around and a bird. Birds are often psychopomps helping souls leave. And there's certainly an idea that as we are able to leave our bodies, that our souls are connected when we are still alive, and that severing the silver cord that connects us to our energy body is what enables us to move towards heaven and not return to the body. I put the avatar picture on the lower left because it does seem in a way as if our souls are inhabiting our physical body in a way that in the Avatar movie, it's like a soul in a glove, that we are having this experience as souls in this physical realm. But yet everything would have us believe that we are a physical body that maybe has a soul. What I see is that we are really a soul, and that is our eternal self. And that we are having a particular experience in this dimension for a limited amount of time. Our earthly sojourn is limited. On the left, on the lower right, you see a painting by Alex Gray, the visionary artist, at the moment of death, when the soul leaves and heads towards the light. and that everything is consciousness. I love the eyes. They really show that. Um, that's also an understanding of indigenous people and ancient civilizations and mystics, that everything is alive, everything is conscious. So here are some examples of, in different cultures, different times, what some of the psychopomps are and what helps us to get home, who's there to meet us and who's there to guide us across the veil. Angels. Angels are something that people consistently see. I will say that when I read people, I have never seen anyone without a guide. Absolutely everyone I've ever read has a guide. I often see them to the left. Sometimes they are projected as an angel, perhaps a guardian angel. Sometimes I see them as a power animal, sometimes an animal. But I really want to emphasize that I've never seen anyone without a guide. And that is something that's with people all the time, every moment. Perhaps it's that guide that helps people, guides people home. And I really don't want to present myself as knowing exactly what it is. I am clear about what I see, but I'm leaving this open for you to bring your own wisdom and interpretation and intuition to this conversation. And I hope to give you some ideas and some comfort in these times that are often so difficult and confusing. Archangel Michael, in some traditions, is the archangel that is the ferryman that helps take people from this realm to the other. Birds. It's interesting to note that indigenous American tribes believed that that birds take people, often owls or crows, ravens. Um, I'm trying to think of the bird that eats the dead bodies of animals. I've forgotten, the vulture. So that's a really important bird for the indigenous people, that the vulture takes the soul of the dead to the other side, to heaven, to the eternal life. And it's really fascinating to note that the Egyptians had a similar belief. Isis wore a vulture on her head, and she was also the midwife of death. And they saw death, of course, as a birth into the spiritual realm, and that our eternal existence was paramount, and that this earthly sojourn was secondary. Animals. Many cultures see horses and dogs as the ferrymen that help us get from this realm to the other. Spirit guides, again, emphasizing, I have never seen anyone without a guide. And many ancestors are around people. So we have allies. And one of the classes that I teach, the courses that I teach on shamanic journey, is to acquaint ourselves with our allies. This is a great advantage in this confusing world, is to have a reliable source of information that can feed us usable and helpful information through our intuition. The shaman is someone who is a psychopomp, who helps the person journey from this realm to the other, as well as being able to visit it. That is something that I actually do in part for a living, is to be able to journey to the other side and communicate with people's ancestors. It seems exotic, but from my own education with my shamanic teacher. A Lakota medicine woman was my primary shamanic teacher. It's a pretty standard operating procedure. It's not at all exotic. Many people are guided by religious figures, or at least meet them on the other side of the journey once the ferryman helps traverse the soul. Often Christians see Jesus, Muslims see Allah, Buddhists see Buddha. So I haven't figured out whether that's a convenient coincidence, or perhaps a projection, a cultural filter through which we see the light being. But I can tell you, I journeyed myself to the other realm. In Peru, I had some pretty amazing experiences. One was with ayahuasca, and I experienced what I thought was God. It changed my life, actually, and I'll tell you a little more about that. In ancient Egypt, Anubis was the guide of the souls, or the psychopomp, as we talked about. And you can see in the middle lower, there's Anubis with the head of a dog. They say a jackal, but I really feel that it's a dog, because the dog is such a loyal guide. And sometimes people talk about their dogs were there when they were having a near-death experience and going down the tunnel, that they were comforted by the wisdom of their animals. So you can see on the left, there's me with my daughter when we were in Egypt, and I'm standing in front of the Sphinx, of course, in the Great Pyramid in the distance on the Giza Plateau. And on the right, you can see an image that shows now this is not my idea, this is an archaeologist talked about the very real possibility that the Sphinx was in fact not the head of a pharaoh and the body of a lion, but perhaps it was actually Anubis. And if you look at the alignment and the importance of ancient alignments, you can see the red, this is a Google Maps, and you can see the Great Sphinx on the Giza Plateau on spring and fall equinox. And as the sun rises, then you can see the exact alignment of the necropolis, where the guide or psychopomp Anubis, possibly Anubis, is looking at the path back home, and where he would be taking souls as a psychopomp to the other side. In ancient Egyptian religion, this is the Osirian, and I like to put this slide in. The Osirian is a archaeological site in Central Egypt. The first time I was there, we needed a military escort to get there. It was very dangerous. I've been there twice, and it is a very unusual ruin. It's subterranean, and you can see the water there. The water is thought to be healing waters like Lourdes. And this is the epicenter of the mystery schools of ancient Egypt. It's called the Osirian, and it's in Abydos, Egypt. And in the same way that people made a pilgrimage to Eleusis in Greece, there was an annual pilgrimage to this site to honor the resurrection of Osiris as Horus and the Amen priesthood. So you can see Amen is actually a very ancient word. And this was the Egyptian Church of Eternal Life. Again, I'm going to be talking about how I believe what's hidden in plain sight is an important message for all of us of birth, death, and rebirth or ascension, that we have instructions hidden in plain sight that are telling us the meaning of why we're here. although we're so distracted by the news and by our busy lives, if we actually took a moment to look at this, or if we were taught this, I think we would have a better understanding of why we're here and what's important to pay attention to. On the lower right side, there is what we call a flower of life. And I emphasize what we call, what we name it, because I do think sometimes names flatten things, make them two-dimensional. But this flower of life, if you can see above it, I don't know, maybe I can bring my cursor. No, my cursor won't go over there. But on the stone above the white glyph are two flower of lives that, as if they were acid etched right into the stone. That is the only image on this whole archaeological site that there are no hieroglyphics. There are only the flower, what we call the flower of life symbol. I don't know how many there are. I think we saw about 9 of them. When I was there the second time, I had to sneak down and tip the guards to get down there. It was very difficult. And these are huge stones. I would call them monolithic, sort of, it has a Stonehenge feeling to it. Now, the Egyptians had the most sophisticated understanding of the soul of any culture that I know of. So I want to include this because I think that we have an understanding of the soul that is primitive. And you can see from the image, this is a picture that I took in Dendera in a subterranean crypt that only the initiates were able to enter. And you can see that this isn't an accident. They didn't make a mistake and carve the face. And you can see where it was touched, where the initiates touched this. This is a representation of something. I don't think we exactly know what it is, but it's showing more than one aspect to a person. And this to me is absolutely fascinating. The Egyptians understood that there were, these are some basic aspects to the soul. The Ba, which was the personality, the person's true self, and it was symbolized by a human with a bird head. And you'll see that in a lot of bas-reliefs. The Ren was a secret name. It had the memory of the life. And the Ab was the heart center of good and evil, defined by a person's character, emotion, will, intention, thought, weighed against truth. So at the time of death, when the Anubis escorted the soul of the deceased person across the river Styx, that is when the heart of the person, the Ab of the person, was weighed against the feather of truth. Now, these are unusual ideas if we think of them in Egyptian terms, but aren't they similar to the life review that a soul has after a near-death experience, where they're shown their life and the choices that they made? They're shown how the good, the loving, the kind things they did affected the loved ones around them, and the ripple effect that it had through time and space, in addition to the selfish, hurtful things that the person did. I saw this myself, and it changed my life. It just changed me. So you can see different aspects of the soul. Some of them are hard for us to even understand, but I suggest that the Egyptians were so much more advanced than we were in understanding the nature of the soul and really why we're here. So in Greek and Roman mythology, and this is a great image of a painted vase. I love this, and you can see the ferryman there, and the angel or the soul, perhaps, that the ferryman is guiding from life across the river Styx to the afterlife. Sharon was the name of this psychopomp into the underworld. And there was a tradition of putting a coin in the mouth of the deceased in order to pay the ferryman. So lovely, lovely, lovely. So here is Eleusis, and you can see the Telestrion was the place where the initiates who made their pilgrimage once in their life at fall equinox to this place. Now, the picture on the bottom is what the Telestrion looks like today. And the picture on the top is the model in the lovely museum of what the Telestrion looked in the time of ancient Rome. The nice thing about this archaeological site is the Romans and the Greeks did not destroy previous cultures. They left it there. So you can see how ancient this place was. And you can see the picture of the initiate sitting against the wall inside the Telestrion. It was dark in there, and they were given this brew, this powerful hallucinogen. Here we go. I want to show you, is this the, oh good. This will show you a little bit of the complex and how advanced and sophisticated it was. This was really the religious center. And Demeter and the symbolism here, Demeter and Persephone or Kore, this is a mother and daughter, or two aspects of the goddess, were separated. Supposedly the daughter was, it depends what culture you look at, because as it became more of a patriarchal culture, the daughter was abducted and raped. But if you look at the earlier goddess culture, she chose to marry the god of the underworld. So you can see a little bit about how ideology changed as the patriarchy became more powerful. And here there's such beautiful paintings. And so the maiden was went to the underworld, which is not hell, by the way, although it was called Hades. It was the place of death, of where the souls went. And so Kore or Persephone was able to go to this underworld and married the lord of the underworld and spent 6 months with him. Her mother was so distraught because she left that she stopped. She cried so much that nothing grew and everything died. So they negotiated that Kore, the maiden Persephone or Kore, would stay 6 months in the underworld and would emerge at spring equinox when everything would bloom again, and the mother and the daughter were reunited. So here is Eleusis, and you can see on the upper right, we've got barley. On the upper left, we've got a pitcher. And in the lower upper left, we have a pitcher. And the lower left, we have poppies and more barley. So it was actually Abby Hoffman, Dr. Abby Hoffman, who in The Road to Eleusis, one of the people who came up with the idea and was later proven with scientific analysis of what was in this kykeon, that it was made of ergot, and it also had poppies in it. Of course, we know opium is made from poppies. On the barley grew a smut. It was a mushroom. It was a mold that has psychedelic properties. And there were families for hundreds of years that knew the exact recipe for how to make the kaikian. And this kaikian was a psychedelic. And people, as you saw back in the Telestrian, would have their beer and drink it. And they would walk all day from Athens. There would be a play that told the story of Persephone and Demeter. And then they would have their brew and their experience that very much was like a near-death experience, and that they had a personal experience with the divine. So really, really powerful. I have to say, going to this site was way more powerful than the Acropolis, actually. This is in Asia, and this is Angkor Wat in exact alignment. And you can see this is a beautiful, very symmetrical religious center that lines exactly up with the equinoxes. Fall and spring equinox are exactly in alignment because of the way that the earth is tilted. So we're talking, the ancient Egyptians talked about death as westing, going to the west, and these exactly line up to the west. So perhaps this is technology and information that is wisdom hidden in plain sight, and that's my premise. This is an amazing, I don't know if any of you have ever been here. This is in New Mexico at Chaco Canyon. And again, many of the alignments in these kivas are in perfect alignment with the equinoxes. And the many indigenous North Americans had religious ceremonies celebrating these equinoxes, and meant to rekindle the sacred fire of life on earth and to send the souls of the deceased to rest in the core of the Milky Way galaxy. So the shaman is someone who is very comfortable in traversing and helping souls to be able to find their way home, as well as visiting in the same way that Kore, Persephone, was able to visit the land of the dead and converse with them. And these shamanic traditions, traversing these realms, there are primarily two realms that the shaman traverses. One is the upper world, and this is a place that I go both in my own personal shamanic journeys, and that I take my clients and I take people in my courses through the drum beat. A rhythmic drum beat at about, I have a drum right here, at about this speed. Repeatedly for about 10-15 minutes will help people to leave their everyday beta consciousness, which is the consciousness I'm in right now and you're in as you're listening to this. But it's a way for people to be able to get out of their workaday rational consciousness and enter an altered state of consciousness for the purpose of being able to traverse dimensions. Does it work? Oh, absolutely. And this is a way that people can have a personal experience contacting their guides, or perhaps having an encounter with the divine, being able to do spiritual work. It's extremely difficult to do spiritual work, and I think near impossible, in a rational state of mind. And our indigenous ancestors knew that, as did the ancient Greeks and the mystery schools. The other realm that the shaman traverses is the lower realms, often using a tree. This is what I use primarily, as a tree, to be able to go to the lower realms where aspects of nature and power animals reside. The upper realms are typically some ancestors and angels, and people experience different things. Sometimes our space brothers and sisters, some people call them aliens, which I've encountered. So I know this is a little out there, but I'm being honest with my experience, and many people have experienced this too. So traveling to the lower realms, interestingly enough, is both something that was done in our classical history and in our ancient history, and is done today because I do it. So accessing the other realms, the mystery schools and elusives, which also not only Rome and Greece, but the goddess cultures and the Minoan cultures, using ergot beer, Dr. Abby Hoffman, who synthesized ergot to make LSD 25, was revolutionary, and it sort of ruined his career, actually. People don't like to think of hallucinogens. It can really ruin an academic career. The ancient Egyptians used the blue lotus, and you'll see that in a lot of Egyptian bas-reliefs. It is not just a design element. The blue lotus is a type of hallucinogen that affects the endocrine system. So Gordon Wasson did a lot of work in Siberia with Amanita muscaria, which is that beautiful red mushroom with white dots on it that you see in fairy tales, and perhaps has something to do with Santa Claus, who many think might have been a product of a hallucinogenic journey, seeing a flying shaman with red and white costumes, flying with reindeer. The Siberians would feed the Amanita mushrooms to the reindeer and drink the urine of the reindeer to purify the toxins out of the hallucinogen. In the Indus Valley in India, there is something called soma, may well have come from a mushroom, which is another hallucinogenic brew, considered a sacrament in the religious setting. I think it's interesting to note that the sacred cow, both sacred in ancient Egypt and in India, we have the oldest living religion, which honors the sacred cow. And of course, we have psilocybin mushrooms growing out of cow dung. Perhaps there's a connection there. And the pre-Columbian mushroom cults of the Aztecs. This is huge. And the conquistadors, when they basically destroyed the Mesoamerican culture, thought this was the work of the devil, and they saw these mushroom cults as something that needed to be destroyed. That hasn't been entirely destroyed, and it is making it a resurgence, not just with teenagers, but with executives in Silicon Valley looking for answers to life's questions, perhaps a vehicle to finding another dimension. So what is similar about the voice of the medicine, the hallucinogenic medicine, and the NDE experience, accessing the afterlife? There's a lot that people bring back that's similar, that changes people's lives. One thing is that things are not dead objects. Everything is alive, even a table, not just trees, plants, rocks, and so forth. And that these living things are, yes, of course, they're living like a tree. If you cut it down, it no longer bears fruit. But people who have journeyed to these other dimensions via the ways I've just described, um, understand that there is a higher consciousness of a tree, for example, that there is wisdom, that these are tree people, or rock people, or weather people, or water people, and that we are within a living consciousness. Same with the animals. Many people who've had near-death experiences or shamanic journeys or medicine journeys, medicine I'm referring to ayahuasca or psilocybin mushrooms, can't eat meat anymore. They understand the higher consciousness of animals, and particularly the horrific conditions of how we slaughter our animals, how we treat them. And that there are messages that the dolphin or the dolphin people, the eagle people have to tell us that we are not at the top of the food chain, that we are part of the web of all existence. Excuse me. That Earth is a conscious being, or what we call the Gaia principle now, but for most of our ancient past, it's a given that this great mother has birthed us, has birthed our body, and that we are a combination of great mother, our body, and who gives us life, and great father who gives us spirit, and that those two aspects of ourselves, the father spirit and the mother or mater for Latin, which is matter, mother, that we are physically our body, the body of mother, and spiritually the child of father, that we together, bringing these two aspects together, we are the child of God. We are the son or daughter of the divine, the spark of the divine. People talk about being connected or interconnected, of part of the whole, not isolated. And as so many of us feel in these modern times and these modern cultures, so cut off from this beautiful existence. Many people meet God or goddess and have a profound loving experience. I did, and it changed my life. Many people have personal meaning or insight and spiritual direction. Well, I don't want to continue doing this job where I'm selling grommets. I want to make a difference and help people, whether they're volunteering or going back to school to learn acupuncture or whatever. They can't continue working for a company that hurts Mother Earth by fracking or doing some intrusive mining, that they want to preserve the earth and love the earth. This is very common with these different experiences. The near-death experience and the life review, as well as having a psychedelic experience and having a life review, is shocking to people. The message is consistent with be a good person, live a good life, take care of unfinished business. And interestingly enough, that's something that I often see with my clientele when I'm communicating with ancestors who are on the other side, is how important it is to finish business while people are in body. And I can talk about that if you'd like me to a little further. So reconciliation of misdeeds. There is also a voice that warns of catastrophes if humans don't change. Not everybody has a message like this, but these messages are consistent. And we all know how important that is. And finally, although there are many other messages, I only had so much space to include some of the top ones, that we are magnificent. We are powerful beyond measure. And I really want to emphasize that. I do see that with people sitting across from me in the situation of doing intuitive work, people are gorgeous. Over and over again, seeing people with my eyes closed blows me away. And we're so powerful. Trauma, um, trauma in so many different forms dulls us, so does substance, so does negativity, depression, and so forth. But underneath it, we are magnificent. I love these pictures. Alex Gray is the artist who did this painting of Gaia and the world and the biofield. The drawing in the upper left is one that I did, illustrated an illustration for my book, Love Never Dies. And the magnetosphere on the lower left, which is the electromagnetic field around the Earth. This is what I think I'm looking at when I'm doing intuitive work. I see a biofield around people, and perhaps this is what an aura is. And in this aura is light, is stories, is information, is trauma, is also lodged in here. But this I wanted to put in there because I want this to be not only informational, but uplifting, to reflect your exquisiteness back to you. Remember that we have power within our consciousness, and we can focus that power, that we have power within our hearts to connect. We are magnificent beings. Perhaps when the Bible talks about being created in, I forget the exact quote, but created in the image of God, and we puny humans return the favor, making God an old man sitting on a cloud. Perhaps being created in the image of God is being little creators, and that we are capable of magnificent creations. I do want to say, when I see people in the act of creation from an intuitive perspective, people are much brighter, they're bigger, they're more powerful. And so that's sort of how I came to this understanding. So I really do consistently see, and it is from my research, my personal experience, and other people's testimony, that in fact we are not a physical being having a soul as if it's a pet, that we are an eternal soul on an earthly sojourn, and that we're having a physical experience. I want to really quickly share with you some of the things that I do in my own work, and then let you ask any questions that you want. Again, this is an Alex Gray painting. This is sort of how I feel like I'm working. I do my best to keep myself as high, energy as high and as pure as humanly possible, because I see myself as an empty bone or a vehicle to bring spirit through when I'm drawing. The drawings on the left are some of the drawings I do of how I see clients with my eyes closed. I was an artist for many years. That was my movie star picture, and that's what I looked like 100 years ago. But those are some of the paintings that I used to do in the murals. And I was known for doing these murals and got a certain amount of notoriety. This was something in Portland. You can see some of the local pictures. I was dragged through great museums as a child by amazing grandparents. I lived with my grandparents because I wasn't able to live with my mother. And this is the Oriental Institute in Chicago, where my grandmother was a docent. And these bas-reliefs are from ancient Babylon. And although the library on the bottom right is not the library at my grandparents' home, it seemed that way to me as a child. But I could not read the books because I was severely dyslexic. They took, this is a painting of ancient Babylon on the left, and that's actually my daughter who's playing viola. She's a classical musician, and John Singer Sargent painting on the far right. They dragged me to concerts and museums, which I thought was cultural abuse. But it was it was it was such a seed that was planted in me. And I came to my love of the ancient world and of my understanding. This is the Oracle of Delphi. And this is what I do for a living. A Sibyl on the right, that's a painting that I did taken from a masterpiece reproduction of an, the Sistine Chapel. Of course, doesn't come close to the real, but the Sibyls were the messengers from the other world, and they were able to glean information and bring it back from the ancient world, and as was the Oracle of Delphi. This is the Oracle of Delphi. I wanted to share some of these pictures with you. One of the life-changing experiences I had was in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid of the Giza Plateau, and that is on the right. That is the granite box. Now, it's called a sarcophagus, but no mummy was ever found in it. And as a matter of fact, no mummy was ever found in any of the pyramids, in the 22 pyramids of ancient Egypt. This is the Great Hall in the middle. And when I was there 25 years ago, my first time I was there, I was with a group of the amazing Greg Braden, and we had 33 people there. And we were all holding hands and chanting and taking turns laying in the rose granite box. The vision that I had from this experience was one of the visions that set me on my path. And although the picture of the egg on the left doesn't represent exactly what I saw, it was at least a picture I could put to illustrate it. The vision that I saw was profound. I saw a green celadon egg, or let's say I was shown by a presence, and this egg was a three-dimensional puzzle. And what was communicated to me by some kind of loving being that communicated telepathically, and I did not have a feeling of who this was or what it was, but it felt like a loving presence, a benevolent presence, that I was shown knowledge of what the universe looked like, and that it was incredibly simple, but complex beyond measure. There was a little more, but I just wanted to share that with you. These were one of the experiences that changed me, along with my experience in Peru and the ayahuasca experience where I saw God. This is one of my own paintings. I used my children as models who at the time worked for Mac and Cheese. And this is called The Lesson. And it's an angel working with the light and mastering the energy in and that's sort of how I see it. I see we're all beings of light working on mastering. This is a painting that's in the collection of Jane Goodall, and that's one of her quotes, probably one of the most things I'm most proud of. And I really do see that we are all stewards of the earth, and that the earth does have spiritual protection and guidance, and that we are here to take care of her. And I hope that we come to that understanding before too long. This is an example of some of the drawings of clients that I've done in the past. This is a typical example of a rendering when I'm doing a reading, and all these symbols actually mean something. So so thank you for the opportunity to share this presentation with you, and I look forward to answering any questions that you might have.
Well, we have a couple of questions already, Jane.
Great.
William Spady says, I had an incredible experience in Albagos that I would like to share with you. I was in the Upper Temple. P.S. He lives in Portland. The next one, he says, the box is an energy machine. As I experienced it, I really got zapped in it.
Would he like to share it now?
It's not practical to do that.
Well, my website is janesinspiration.com. If you just Google Jane DeForest, my website will pop up and you can fill out, just put a little communication. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I would love to hear your story. I think it's so important to share these stories. And I'm sure you got zapped, and I'm sure you had I mean, you imagine that the energy in these centers over millennium have been mystical. It's imbued in the space. There's vortexes. I think it's powerful, and I'm sure your story is very interesting and true.
I was with Tom Kenyon in 2008. William says,
Cool. Tom Kenyon's, I don't know him personally, but I know his work and I have the greatest respect for him. So thank you. Yes, please reach out. I'd love to hear your story.
cool. Does Chuck have any questions? He usually has.
I can't type in the Q&A box, so I'll just
Don't
That's-
type, just talk.
the model that this is a one-room schoolhouse and that we have spiritual grades, if you will, that there are souls here from all levels, and so you've brought us some of the most graduate school, let's call it, images of spirituality. And how do you see that progression going for those folks who, this is brand new, or this is something they're, stumbling to try to understand? How do you see spiritual progression, for our experiences here as human beings?
Great question. Thank you, Chuck. So I see most of my clients are pretty advanced spiritually. So when I'm looking at their soul, but it does seem like, I could answer that a couple of different ways. It does seem like the younger souls perhaps are more involved with material pursuits or pursuits of a carnal, and I don't necessarily mean sex is or lust is a bad thing, but it's just sort of a lower ebb as opposed to a spiritual aspect. So as people seem to advance spiritually, they seem to have a deeper understanding of what's important, which doesn't seem that complicated, actually. I don't think it, I have some very advanced spiritual clients who are not PhDs. They are, they range in levels of sophistication, but they could be a plumber. I mean, I have a client who's a plumber who is probably one of the most advanced spiritual beings in my clientele, and my clientele is pretty advanced. And he is he's a steward. He takes care of people. He's very concerned about doing the right thing. He's got a warrior, sort of a noble warrior aspect to him. But I really feel like, and that's part of why I want to present this material, is I feel like so many of us are stuck. We're stuck without without guidance, because perhaps we're not going to church, or church isn't doing it for us, or we didn't have a near-death experience, or we didn't have a plant medicine experience. And we're sort of stuck, especially by the time we get to be our age or my age. You get in the habit of being yourself, and it's hard to escape your habits, and the identification with yourself as your ego self, your personality, what you do for a living, if you're a parent, if you're, um, who you are socially, then the little initials after your name and so forth. That's why I really wanted to throw this out there with all this different information, to encourage people in, without it being so specific to a religion or a historical, just trying to show how throughout history we've been able to follow the trajectory, which seems to be birth into the physical world, then dying to our old selves and being reborn of our spiritual selves, or being born again of the spirit, and ascension of a spiritual path. That seems to be what is universal.
Okay, if I quick follow-up, which is, you say that you've never worked with anyone that didn't have a spirit guide there.
Sure.
And that in terms of, if people want to open up to that reality and have that information, because everything we seem to hear from our speakers from all sides of this subject matter, near-death experiences, looking at what's happening now, we seem to be in the process of transition to a higher consciousness, a greater reality. So how would you advise people to be more open to or aware of what those guides would be giving them in the day-to-day as they're trying to navigate this time in our history?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to answer it in two parts. One, that I really do see that's true. I see a couple things happening. I do see the divine feminine rising. So that, what does that mean? I see that the feminine aspect, or that's within everybody, so people's intuition as opposed to their reason, is awakening. Okay. I also know, and you can check the NASA site for this, that we are entering, or have been entering for some time, a photon belt. And that has something to do with our being pummeled with neutrinos, or some kind of raising our consciousness. I know that the heartbeat of the earth, which is called the Schumann resonance, is off the charts. So everybody, the tide rises and everybody's moving up. Whether people can handle it or not is another story. And these are part of the ancient prophecies too. I personally see that in my own life and my clients' life. So people are handling it, and some people are shutting down because it's too much. Some people are negotiating it in their lives very well, and they're handling the new information that's coming in. So that's how I see sort of the big picture of what's happening. As far as I think your question is, how do you establish a reliable dialogue with your allies, your spirit guides, your power animals, and so forth? So how I work with my clients in this way is to really listen to your intuition. So when I teach a course, and I have a course coming up in September for for intuition and art, I use art in everything I teach, because it's a way to access information within yourself and bypass your rational mind, which will really muck things up. So, and I'm also teaching a shamanic journey course that has 3 aspects to it, which is how to journey, meeting your power animal or your ally, and soul retrieval, all really important in this time. So the two things that I think are important in how to create dialogue with your ally is, number one, know that your ally is communicating with you through your intuition. It's subtle. It's going to be tingles up the spine, maybe chicken skin, maybe a little sick to your stomach if there's some, something that's wrong or negative, dreams. There's so many different ways, but it's subtle. Let me go through a couple more. Symbols. You might hear a song on the radio that's giving you a message, or a bird, something in nature that's giving you a message. The universe is intelligent and it's communicating with you all the time, and your guide is your ally. It's your liaison. So that would be the first way, is to start paying attention to how you're getting it. Get it in your physical body is really key. So the other thing is to journey. So using a drum beat, if you go to my website, I've posted a drum beat on YouTube, but you don't need to use mine. You can, go to YouTube and get a shamanic drum beat and start listening to it. Give it 30 days, perhaps. Listen to it as you're going to bed, and start training yourself to be able to escape this consciousness. It's very difficult to communicate with a subtle ally. You just can't do it with this workaday consciousness. I think it's impossible. So you've got to change your consciousness to be able to get to another dimension where you can communicate with these guides. And absolutely everybody I've ever seen personally has an ally. Now, sometimes I see them as an angel. Sometimes I see them as an animal person. Sometimes I see them as an animal. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's, I don't know. So I'm really clear about what I don't know. I try not to make stuff up. So, but it's hard to say I don't know, because I want you to think I know lots of stuff.
Well, thank you so much for that clarification. And I think, Howie, you do have some other questions in the Q&A box now.
Yes, we do. Rich says, sounds very much like what quantum physics is beginning to reveal, especially on the toroidal fields. Is there something you want to say to that, or?
Yeah. So what I showed you in the image of the electromagnetic field, these are considered also toroidal fields. Those are another name for it. And they are measurable fields that are generated by the electromagnetic energy of the heart. And there's minor ones with the brain, and then apparently every cell has an electromagnetic field. I mean, we're so magnificent. And every living thing seems to have this, including the earth. And the earth's field is, we call the magnetosphere. I try to say we call it because, it's a mystery, and we're just laying on a name to these things. We're so magnificent. Our field seems to go out to our fingertips if it's healthy. If we're sick, I see people have a smaller field. If someone's an advanced being, I'll see their field is maybe twice as big as to their fingertips. And you can change it with your mind. You can make yourself big or small. Well, people who know how to do it can do such things. That way. That's a different class, though.
Yes. Robin's asking for advice. She will be participating in a women's medicine circle soon. Her intention is being formulated is to energize a quickening for humanity, awakening, praying collectively and with other women using sound vibrations and psilocybin mushrooms. Advice.
So here's my experience with altering my consciousness. I'll place it in Peru because it's legal there. So if this is the body and this is the soul, and this is what makes us human, perhaps we come together at conception or birth. I'm not sure. I think it varies. But anyway, we have the body and the soul, and this is what makes us. This is us. Upon death, there's separation. So our body returns to mother and our soul returns to father. So when this is my understanding and experience of it. On a hallucinogen, such as psilocybin mushrooms, the soul separates from the body temporarily. Not too far away, but enough so that the soul can have an experience. There is still a cord that connects the soul to the body. A broken cord means the soul goes back to father, and that's the end of that life. So in an indigenous tradition, which is where psilocybin mushrooms originate, or ancient tradition, because psilocybin mushrooms, I talked about them growing on cow dung, so, and cows being sacred. So, I mean, they're all over the world. So in a sacred environment, there's a shaman that protects the body while the soul is off journeying. If you think of the body as, say, like a house, and the soul is like the inhabitant of the house. If the soul's inhabiting the house, nobody can get into the house. You're defending the house, your home, the lights are on, somebody's home. If you're not in the house, lights on, nobody home, anybody can come into your house and rummage around and look at your jewelry and eat a sandwich out of your refrigerator. That's the job of the shaman, or the holy person, is to protect you when you're in that space. When I journeyed a couple different times in a couple different ways. There was a time when I didn't have a shaman. I became my own shaman. So what I actually did was I created this painting. And this painting is actually so this is a little bit of a different conversation, and it's how you can use art to manifest spiritually in this dimension. And that's part of what I teach. But this was a protection that I used along with some of my other medicine is what I call my spiritual accoutrement, if you want. My power pieces, crystals and feathers and so forth. So this portal has my people. Having your people, your ancestors there to protect you is really key. This is my husband and me, my mother, my dog, my 3 children, and the 5 grandchildren I have seen but don't have yet. This is my ancestors past and living, my husband's ancestors past and living. And I've got symbolism around, I've got the world underneath it, was painted underneath. Underneath are sacred symbols that you can't see, but the energy's there because I painted them. I've got hearts growing. So this is my own symbolic expression. I painted it using holy water. So this is just my way of doing it. And I always do a prayer beforehand, and I call in my spirit guides. I have spirit guides that I work with, very specific ones. I called them in before I did this presentation so that I would be the highest, best vehicle to communicate this information to the people that showed up. And then I'm protected. So ceremony, call your people, do your prayer work. I like doing an artwork in some way. It doesn't have to be good. Don't worry about it being good, just that it's imbued with your energy and sacred symbol. And if you've got a shaman, that's great too. So that's a complicated answer, but good for you. And please make sure when you come back from your journey, have a piece of paper that is not lined and perhaps some crayons or a pencil, and draw what your journey was. You can write if you please, but by drawing, you're accessing information that's pre-verbal, that's in, you'll be journeying, then it will be like a dream state. So the information that you'll be bringing back, and you will be bringing back important information, will not be linear. So to reduce it to a sentence, if you have to, okay, but first start to draw it a little bit, because you'll eventually forget it like a dream, perhaps, or maybe just remember a few things. And this is why the indigenous people and our ancient ancestors thought it was important to make these journeys, is to bring back the information. Joseph Campbell talks about the hero. The hero has to go to the north, to the forbidden realm that the tribe doesn't, that is a forbidden place for the tribe to go. And that's where the hero has to go to get the secret that will come and save the tribe, that will enhance the culture. So that's why in part why people journey, is to bring back those forgotten bits, or the parts of your soul that have been lost in trauma. It depends, the mushroom's in charge, if you will. The teacher is the mushroom.
Thank you. We have one more question, and then if you have anything else you'd like to say, you're welcome to do that. Are you familiar with the book, The Immortal Key by Marascu? It also equates the Kaikion with the Christian Eucharist. If so, would you comment?
I don't know that key, but yeah, I think it is. I think that was the original. I think this was the sacrament. I really do. And then it was diluted and changed, and then, and then the personal experience with the divine was sidelined, and you had to talk to a priest to talk to God, and you couldn't have a personal experience and so forth. Luckily, this is changing, and the iron grip has changed. Yeah, that's good. I'm so glad you read that you read that book. That's awesome. So a couple things I want to throw out there as far as interesting things that are coming up. I'm going to be doing a conference. It's on my website in Mount Shasta at the end of August, if everything's still copacetic. I do perceive some big changes coming. I will say that I don't exactly know how they'll manifest. But it should be an interesting conference. I'm low man on the totem pole. There's some big names in the UFO and sort of awakening community there. I've also got, I am going to be taking sabbatical this summer, so I won't be doing any sessions or any classes, but I will be back in the fall doing sessions and classes. I have one more week before I close, so I may have a few sessions if anybody's interested. Check on my website. And I will be doing 2 courses coming up in September and October. One is the Shamanic Journey and Art class, which will be the shamanic journey. It will be meeting your allies, your power animal, and soul retrieval. And intuition and art class, which is sort of what I was talking before, is you'll be learning how to cultivate your own intuition for yourself and to apply it in whatever way you want. And both are using art. So those are some fun events that are coming up. And the last event is with AZIANDS, the Institute for Noetic Science, Vancouver community group. And I'll be doing a summer solstice presentation and ceremony. You'll see a little bit more about how ancient sites align and why that's important, how we are going through the yugas, or the great year, which is a 26,000 year cycle. And we're going, luckily we're going up. We've been through the Iron Age, we're in the Bronze Age, we're heading to the Silver Age and the Golden Age. So we're heading in the right direction. It's going to take a couple thousand years, so we perhaps will have to incarnate several times, but I'll be talking more about that. all that information, and that's free, by the way, all that information is on my website, so.
Well, thank you very much, Jane. Really good seeing you again. And I have one personal thing I need to say. I need to wish my wife happy birthday. So today's her birthday. She let me share her birthday with you guys. And we look forward. We have Michelle in Claire in July. Look for people to join that. And now we'll go to a unpaid commercial. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you so much, Jane. Terrific, terrific program tonight. Thank you for being here for us.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I'm deep into my book for the AZIANDS Visiting Authors Online Book Club. This one is by a NASA scientist, Dr. Ingrid Hunkela. Ingrid had a near-death experience when she was just a child, and subsequently, she was guided her entire life by light beings. It's a fascinating story. I'm Nancy Van Alphen. I started the AZIANDS Online Book Club as a way to dive deeper into the details of authors' near-death experiences and spiritually transformative experiences. Often we don't get to hear those details in lectures due to time constraints or other concerns, but our book club gives us plenty of time to do that. And we do hear some great details that you probably have never heard. In fact, Jeff Olson, who is a recent visiting author, said, "You guys ask the best questions ever." Well, that's just the caliber of our book club and of our authors. You know, AZIANDS is a foundational and well-respected organization that enables me to reach out to highly sought-after authors and brand new authors. We're usually the first to know of new NDE and STE books. So we're able to incorporate those into our book club and give you the opportunity to join us and hear those authors talk at our monthly meetings. So how does it work, you want to know? I'm glad you asked. I host the sessions every other month, and on alternate months, my co-host Sophia Triunfo hosts. Sometimes the session dates and times change, but we're generally every third Thursday or every first Sunday of the month. The session fees are very nominal, $7 to $10 per session, and you can attend as many sessions as you'd like. There are discounts if you are an ISGO AZIANDS member. Oh, hi. Sorry, I'm deep into my book for the AZIANDS Visiting Authors Online Book Club. This one is by a NASA scientist, Dr. Ingrid Hunkela. Ingrid had a near-death experience when she was just a child, and subsequently, she was guided her entire life by light beings. It's a fascinating story. I'm Nancy Van Alphen. I started the AZIANDS Online Book Club as a way to dive deeper into the details of authors' near-death experiences and spiritually transformative experiences. Often we don't get to hear those details in lectures due to time constraints or other concerns, but our book club gives us plenty of time to do that. And we do hear some great details that you probably have never heard. In fact, Jeff Olson, who is a recent visiting author, said, "You guys ask the best questions ever." Well, that's just the caliber of our book club and of our authors. You know, AZIANDS is a foundational and well-respected organization that enables me to reach out to highly sought-after authors and brand new authors. We're usually the first to know of new NDE and STE books. So we're able to incorporate those into our book club and give you the opportunity to join us and hear those authors talk at our monthly meetings. So how does it work, you want to know? I'm glad you asked. I host the sessions every other month, and on alternate months, my co-host Sophia Triunfo hosts. Sometimes the session dates and times change, but we're generally every third Thursday or every first Sunday of the month. The session fees are very nominal, $7 to $10 per session, and you can attend as many sessions as you'd like. There are discounts if you are an ISGO IANDS member. So look at the website and check out the details. As far as the books, you don't have to read the books, but of course we highly encourage it. Of course, how could we come up with the best questions possible, right? So I encourage you to go to ISGO, ISGO.IANDS, IANDS.org, and go to the drop-down menu under Meetings and Courses and find the IANDS Online Book Club. And you'll be taken to our full year roster and each individual session. By the way, all the proceeds go to IANDS, which is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization that supports near-death experiencers and the study of NDEs. I hope you'll join me for a session. I'm sure it will change the way that you think about life, death, and the reason for our being. Now, I've got to get back to my reading. I've got a whole lot of books to get to. Thanks, and I hope to see you soon.
Hello, I understand you're interested in our nonprofit organization, the International Association for Near-Death Studies, otherwise known as IANDS. If you're interested in IANDS, then you're interested in near-death experiences and spiritually transformative experiences. Let me share some of the information about our nonprofit organization that may help you. The best place to start is at our website, www.iands.org, where you can find in-depth articles and links to everything that I'm about to share. Now, at the beginning, our founders started IANDS in 1978, and they are Dr. Raymond Moody, who wrote Life After Life, Dr. Bruce Grayson, who was our research director and editor of the Journal of Near-Death Studies from 1981 to 2008, Dr. Kenneth Ring, who was the author of Heading Toward Omega and Lessons from the Light, and Dr. Michael Saban, who was the author of Recollections of Death and Light and Death. And last but not least, John Audette. He was IANDS' first executive director. Now, they wanted to start an international association for the serious studies of the near-death phenomena. And from its early beginnings, IANDS has evolved so much more from there. IANDS now has local support groups at various locations throughout the world. They host monthly peer-to-peer group meetings where a near-death experiencer or a leader in the field tell their experience or teach the group. To support these groups, we also host group leader meetings where leaders can network and share amongst themselves. If you're considering becoming an IANDS local group facilitator or leader, contact me, Dave Bennett. You can reach me at daveb@iands.org, and I'm the IANDS local group coordinator. I also suggest you try the IANDS sharing groups online, known as ISGO, at isgo.iands.org, where you can explore many topics surrounding NDEs from the comfort of your own home. If you're considering becoming an ISGO certified facilitator or moderator, then join the intern program for online groups. There you can facilitate a theme or a topic group of your own design. Also, you can support major research programs like ISGO webinars and courses. The training programs for ISGO, the dates run a number of times a year, and you can find more information at isgo.iands.org, or you can contact their coordinator, Chuck Swedrock, at chucks@iands.org. IANDS has annual conferences. And some years they're in-person conferences, and other years they're virtual online conferences. We hope to see you at our annual conference, which typically moves around the United States each year. Information and links to our conferences and registration is available on our website. These are exciting opportunities because at our conferences, you'll find many experiencers as well as afterlife researchers. There's nursing programs and there's veteran events, and there's sharing groups for experiencers. Now, AZIANDS publishes an academic journal, and we print these 3 times a year. It's a peer-reviewed journal for members, and it's called the Journal of Near-Death Studies, which you can obtain by becoming a member at the professional level or above. You can also buy journals on our website. Now, our nonprofit organization has been in service for nearly 40 years, and that's a lot of printed NDE research material. We also distribute our Vital Signs magazine. This is printed approximately quarterly with several articles relating to different types of extraordinary experiences. There's book reviews and newsworthy items, and it's emailed to all members. Also, there's the NDE of the month. Every AZIANDS member receives an email approximately once a month with an account of an experiencer that our members have submitted to our online website. And let's not forget NDE Radio. Host Lee Whitting is himself a near-death experiencer with a Doctor of Ministry degree in NDE studies. NDE Radio airs live every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern on TalkZone.com. The shows feature first-hand stories of near-death and out-of-body experiences. Experiencers can also submit their experience on the AZIANDS website. Whether it's a near-death, near-death-like, or a third-person narrative, if you'd like to submit your experience to our database, it's located on our website. If you'd like to read some of the experiences, they're also located under the NDE tab. AZIANDS provides medical education. We provide education to the medical field with an online nursing CEU course. This is free to anyone. AZIANDS also has an NDE medical training video and a Veterans NDE video available on our website in addition to our research. If you're into social media, AZIANDS has a Facebook page. If you type in International Association for Near-Death Studies, or AZIANDS, you'll find our page, plus many of our local groups have their own Facebook pages. You can find many videos on our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and type in AZIANDS videos, you'll find our page. We're also on Twitter. Our Twitter address is @AZIANDS. So please go to our social media pages and let us know what you think. The latest AZIANDS book is The Self Does Not Die, which NDE researchers Robert Mays and Dr. Jan Holden edited along with Dutch researchers to provide veridical evidence to show proof that consciousness continues. This can be purchased on Amazon. Also, AZIANDS has recently published Foundations of Near-Death Research, and it's an anthology of 25 landmark research articles from our Journal of Near-Death Studies. This volume provides a systematic overview, a map of what scholars have achieved so far within the many fields of research. And that's also available on Amazon and Kindle. Now, if you want more information, we have brochures available on our website, and they can be downloaded for free. We also have a Zen shopping cart on our website. If you would like to donate to AZIANDS research, to its education, or transformative experiencer support, please go to our website. And I want to thank you so much. Take care.
When a patient has a near-death experience, how do you recognize it? how do you respond to it? A new training video provides answers to these questions. These 4 patients have all had near-death experiences, also known as NDEs. Most caregivers know little of this phenomenon because patients are often reluctant to talk about it, and few programs deal with this aspect of patient care. In many cases, medical professionals' lack of training has led to patients being ignored, mislabeled as psychotic, or inappropriately medicated, sometimes with devastating consequences.
I think the doctor's responses really impacted my healing. What did I have? Did that ever happen to anybody else? I needed to know that.
Well, several studies have shown that near-death experiences occur to between 10 and 20% of people who are documented to come close to death, for example, with a cardiac arrest.
Some of the common characteristics of near-death experiences are people feel a sensation of coming out of their physical body, possibly being up at the ceiling and watching and hearing everything that is happening before them.
I was translated, immediately propelled, immediately into the light.
Because I got the input I did, I wound up cramming it psychologically. And you know, you can't cram psychologicals. You can for a while, trauma, but it's going to come out.
And I would have said, pay it no mind. And of course, I now realize I would have been absolutely wrong.
The NDEer sometimes shuts down and doesn't disclose the NDE again, sometimes for years.
One of my hopes is that we can raise awareness among providers about the fact that this phenomenon does exist. Whether it's something that we can prove scientifically or not actually becomes quite irrelevant. It is a subjective experience that the patient has that we need to honor and provide an invitation for patients to process that.
And in fact, our whole world will be much better off as we kind of take the lid off and allow people to report what they go through in these kinds of mystical journeys.
This groundbreaking video features 6 medical professionals, addresses the needs of near-death experiencers, and provides professional and general audiences with knowledge of NDEs. Get a copy to share with your family, your doctors and nurses, your church and your community. It will help transform their understanding of near-death experience. A training package is also available for hospitals, medical schools, nursing programs, hospice, and other organizations. This training package includes the video disc, plus a PowerPoint presentation, discussion questions, role-play scenarios, reading lists, brochures for caregivers and experiencers, as well as other training materials. Order online at www.iands.org/video or call 919-383-7940.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Weiter. Weiter.